AFC North rivalry will take center stage on the Sunday night football matchup as the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers wrap up what promises to be a great Sunday of football in Week 14 of the NFL season. The Ravens opened as a 6-point underdog, but we have seen early action on the road underdogs to push this number down to +4. There is a lot to unpack with this game. The Ravens, who find themselves in the thick of the playoff hunt at 7-5, have won 3 straight and 4 of their last 5 to move up into wildcard contention. The Ravens are 3-1-1 against the spread over the last 5, including 2 shutout wins. The Steelers won, but failed to cover in a primetime spot for the second straight week, and have only covered twice in their last 5 games. Baltimore has won 40-0, 23-0, and 44-20 over the last 6 weeks, with a bye week mixed in. In those games, the Ravens have had 295, 219, and 370 yards of offense. Baltimore isn't winning with offense, and that's basically the point to make here. The Ravens, despite a season-high 370 yards against the Lions, are very much dead last in yards per play this season with 4.5. Joe Flacco has completed 65% of his passes, but only has an 11-11 touchdown interception ratio and just 5.5 yards per attempt. He's been throwing the ball downfield more in recent weeks without a whole lot of success, but maybe it has opened things up for Alex Collins and the running game. Flacco can't seem to connect with Mike Wallace, who only has 34 catches and hasn't been able to throw to Jeremy Maclin as he hasn't been open often enough. It is hard for teams to move the ball without explosive plays, and the Ravens only have 8.5 yards per reception this season. Fortunately, Alex Collins has 4.9 yards per carry, and the Ravens have been able to rely on him more lately. They may not have that chance this week, though, as Collins has been suffering from migraine headaches. The Ravens only have converted 32.5% of their third down attempts this year. The Ravens' defense, however, has been absolutely stunning. Baltimore has forced 29 turnovers, which has allowed the offense to have more of a chance with short fields. The Ravens are one of 6 teams allowing fewer than 5 yards per play this season. With 20 interceptions and 33 sacks, the Ravens are second in the NFL in adjusted net yards per pass attempt against this season at 4.1. The Ravens haven't moved the ball in chunks on offense, but the opposition hasn't moved the ball much either. The Ravens are also a top 10 defense against the run with just 3.9 yards per carry allowed. Baltimore will have to make some significant adjustments in the secondary this week because star corner Jimmy Smith ruptured his Achilles and is now out for the season. To add insult to injury, he was also suspended 4 games for a positive PED test. Smith led the team in pass breakups and was second to Eric Weddle in interceptions. That means Brandon Carr and Marlon Humphrey will have to figure out how to cover Antonio Brown in this game. On the bright side for Baltimore, at least Juju Smith-Schuster won't be a factor. The Steelers vs. Bengals game basically looked more like a street fight than a football game on Monday night. The cheap shots on the mountain of penalty yards resulted in some suspensions, and Smith-Schuster will sit out a game for his violent and unnecessary block on Vontaze Burfict. Ben Roethlisberger will once again have to rely heavily on Antonio Brown, but if you're going to have to rely on one guy, he's a pretty good one to rely on. Roethlisberger is 274 of 436 on the season with a mediocre 22-13 touchdown interception ratio. Brown has 88 of those catches for 1,296 yards and 9 of the touchdowns. Le'Veon Bell also has 66 of those catches and has 270 rushing attempts with 3.9 yards per carry. The Steelers' offense is not what we've seen in past years, but with Bell and Brown, the team can still move the ball. Pittsburgh is tied for 8th with 5.6 yards per play. The last game, however, marked the 4th game in the last 5 that the Steelers have failed to run for at least 100 yards. Football became secondary last Monday night when Ryan Shazier suffered what is being called a spinal cord contusion. He was carted off the field without feeling in his lower half, and the video, which you may have seen by now, was very scary. As Shazier continues to recover, the spectacular Steelers defense attempts to move on without its leader and top tackler. The Pittsburgh defense has held the opposition to 5 yards per play this season and ranks 6th in adjusted net yards per pass attempt. Pittsburgh is also second in sacks. Keith Butler will have to adjust without Shazier, who was on pace to play every game of the season for the first time in his career. Shazier isn't the only Steelers defender out of action. Joe Haddon remains out with a broken leg, and Mike Mitchell missed the game against Cincinnati. Traditionally, this rivalry game is a very close one. Dating back to November of 2009, 14 of the last 19 games have been decided by 7 points or less, and 12 of those by 4 points or less. The Steelers have a short week to recover and are missing two key pieces, one on each side of the ball. The spot favors Baltimore, and the Ravens are not beating themselves with turnovers, which helps with a subpar offense. So our pick and prediction will be to take the Baltimore Ravens and the +4 points.